So the core question at the heart of the capital absorption framework is, what does it take to make a place investable, right? So let me just start with asking you about the capital absorption framework. Why that language?
Well, we were really thinking about what it takes for capital to go to ground, to go into the kinds of deals and opportunities that people are really looking for. And the metaphor, the metaphor queen, the metaphor that really struck me was that of soil. That if you have properly aerated soil and you've tended the garden, then when you water it, the water goes in. And if you don't, then the water runs off. Mm-hmm. And we were really struck by how many of the funds that our foundations and banks and insurance companies had participated in actually never got deployed. Mm-hmm. So they raised these funds, they put a great deal of money and time and effort into putting the funds together. But then the opportunities to use the capital just didn't show up. And we thought, it was just as important to organize the demand as it was to organize the supply. And that was really the thought behind the capital absorption framework. So we started looking at a whole bunch of different places, some that were doing very well with capital absorption and others that were really struggling on the community investment front. And we tried to figure out, what did it look like in the places that were doing well? And what we came up with was that 3 activities, and you see them here, really needed to be happening at the same time. So these are not sequential, neat things that you do them once and then you're done. These are iterative, and they go back and forth in that nice weave. And what we found as we've worked across now dozens of communities, whether they're rural or urban, whether they're regions or neighborhoods, is that you really do need to attend to all 3 of these things. So what are the 3? The first is you need a shared priority. And by that we mean you have to be able to say, preferably in a sentence, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Because if you can understand it, you can rally people around it. And if it's really shared by the people who are going to be most affected by the investment, it has a lot of power to galvanize and attract capital. The second is you have to be able to put together a pipeline of actual real deals and opportunities where you can put your money and make the shared priority come to life. And we'll talk a lot about what does it take to do that pipeline, because that's hard work. And then the third is you have to be thinking really actively about intervening in the enabling environment, the context that you're working in, so that the next deal is easier and not harder than the one you just finished. And there are lots of ways to do that because the context really can be influenced. So what we found is that if people attend to those 3 functions and they collaborate across sectors and silos, they can make a real difference in how investment capital flows to their communities. So I'm curious about geography, right? So the capital absorption framework, I'm assuming, is always place-based. Mm-hmm. What's the right level of place? I mean, how do you know, neighborhood, municipality, state, region? What's the way of thinking about that? So what we found, and we've experimented with that a lot, is that there isn't one answer. But again, the metaphor of water really helps. If you think about a watershed, it doesn't necessarily follow jurisdictional boundaries, right? Water flows where water flows, and gravity matters. Mm-hmm. So it's the same for capital. And if what we're talking about is an area where there's not a lot of economic activity, then you probably need to go regional. Mm-hmm. Because in order to attract an investor, you're going to have a bigger geographic spread. We've normally found that a neighborhood is too small, because if we're really trying to change policy and change institutional practice, as we talked about for the enabling environment, then doing something on a neighborhood scale, you can start there, but it has to have broader applicability. So it's a scale where capital would make sense, where there's enough investment opportunity, but not too much. And so there's a little bit of a Goldilocks thing that goes on there. And experimentation is okay, and people have adjusted the boundaries as they go.
Okay, so before we dig into the next section on shared priorities, anything else you want to add on the capital absorption framework itself?
Well, I think just that it's the kind of thing where people have to collaborate, right? Capital absorption is not something that's done, alone at night with a piece of paper. And what we found is that if people are able to use this as kind of a common way, an approach to think about the problem, it really does take off, because it gives people a place to hang the different issues that come up as they're thinking about moving a big objective. And so we encourage people to invite their friends to think about who's necessary to make something big happen in the place that they live, and then use this as a kind of flexible guiding principle to go forward.
Excellent, thank you.